Hello, everybody, once again. My name's Kevin Coleman. I'm here to talk about flip learning with you all. This is a continuation of previous podcasts on flip learning. This is my preferred way to chat with you all, especially you in the Electronic Village flip learning session. So I've read through a bunch of comments and questions. I asked for questions, and sure enough, I got them. And in fact, it took me a while to read through them all. So I just, this is my preferred way of communication, so I'm just going to take a stab at answering some of your questions and comments. Some of them are not easy, and I chose some of the difficult questions here, so that increases my chance of huge embarrassing failure. But all the same, I'm just going to chat at you here, celebrate take one, and no editing on this because I don't have time. I barely have enough time to do this. So I guess that was an introduction. Let's chat about your comments and questions about flip learning. A lot of these are from week 2 and a couple from week 3. If you're posting questions, I guess I just want to start off. I guess a good place to start would be addressing this. What is the best use of your in-class time, and what best lends itself to flipping out of class? A lot of comments have been vocabulary and grammar, and that's exactly where I started too, and I'm flipping a class currently. I just started a new client, and I'm working on a flip curriculum, something for that particular company, and it's easy to go straight to vocabulary and grammar. However, I just want to make a special note here about great flip learning involves great pedagogy in general, and I just want to refer to a book, the work of Paul Nation, who talks about the 4 strands and how a great language course is divided equally into 4 parts. And those parts are meaning-focused input, meaning-focused output, language instruction, and fluency development. So it's easy to get excited about flip learning, and vocabulary and grammar are an easy spot to do that, but studies have found that a lot of language courses focus a lot on the language-focused instruction part, which according to Nation should be only 25%. So be careful of letting grammar and vocabulary and direct language instruction of skills take over the whole course, because there also needs to be extensive and intensive reading and listening and speaking and writing and communicative activities. And also what he says is the most lacking in most courses around the world is the fluency development. So I just wanted to say that it's easy to flip the grammar and vocabulary, but let's not let grammar and vocabulary take over the entire course. Because you don't want to be an all grammar class and just turn it into a flip grammar class. I mean, unless it's a specific grammar class. So it depends on your context, but I think a lot of people want to be able to use the language in lots of ways, and so let's just not make it all about grammar, people. Also, one more thing about that is be careful of, I've seen some comments that say things like, more free practice in the class. So we'll flip the grammar and then they can do more free practice. Well, you're going to find that, hey, well, what the heck am I supposed to do with my face-to-face class time now? So be careful of saying, and we'll just do more free activity. You're going to have to explore and be more specific on the types of tasks that you're doing in class and make sure that they are built off of the out-of-class part. And also be careful of group work. The words group work. Well, they're going to do more free practice and group work in class. Well, you want to define that, because remember, flip learning is about transforming your class and changing the culture. So if you're just beginning, it's very natural to think, I want to flip the vocabulary and the grammar, and they're going to come to class and we'll do more free practice. But keep in mind that you want to be moving to a more student-centered, student-led, student-governed even class where you're transforming your class. So don't just focus on grammar and vocabulary. We have an awesome comment from Nuria. She mentioned the demand on memory, and I think flipped learning does decrease cognitive load. I think an article just came out. I saw a headline on the Flip Learning Network. I didn't read it, but obviously other studies show that when you're learning the task as well as the content in a language, that can be a high cognitive load. But by flipping things, you can give them much more time to practice and that does free up some cognitive resources for your in-class practice. Great comment, Nuria. Comment from Oh Dear. She mentioned that technology has more access. People have more access to information, but that they're getting more lazy to remember it. So, for example, with access to all information everywhere, people can just Google it real fast. And so people are getting lazy with actually remembering the stuff. And I just think that I don't have much to say about that. I just thought that was an interesting comment. Carolina responded to that. But I will say that studies are showing now that people are getting worse about remembering content. But we're getting much, much better at remembering where things are. So we're terrible at remembering phone numbers now because we don't have to do it. But we're great at remembering where we put that phone number. We might be really terrible at recalling what exactly is on that document. But I tell you what, click, 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 click. I can tell you where that is in what folder and where on my computer. So it's a kind of a change in how our memory is working. So that was an interesting comment. Thank you very much. Oh dear. If they're super lazy for technology and they can just Google or whatever, maybe we should be changing the type of questions we're asking, and change up the type of task that we're asking them to do. So if they can just quickly Google and find a simple answer, well, maybe that's a problem with the question that we're asking. Because if someone can just Google a quick answer, well, maybe that's not a very good question. I would recommend Googling Bloom's Taxonomy Teacher Toolkit. It's a great document. It's got a lot of example questions based on different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And use that in your lesson planning. Use that when you're building the tasks to focus on more upper level, higher order thinking skill types of questions so that they can't just quickly Google the answer and find a simple answer. Let's ask really good questions that might not necessarily have a simple answer. So that might help the technologies making them lazy part. Let's make it challenging for them. Another comment here from Aloysia. I don't know if I'm saying your name right. She made a nice French video, I think giving directions. It was awesome. And it's a great example of how easily you can make a quick little video. She drew some pictures on the paper, held a phone or an iPad over a desk with the pieces of paper on it. And not only is that, I think cheap if you have a phone. If you have to buy a phone, obviously it's not cheap, but most of us already have phones, so it's cheap. Just use some piece of paper and drew some simple directions on the paper and then moved the papers and shot a video of it. It's an effective and cheap and fast way to make a highly effective video. I loved it. It doesn't have to be fancy, people. That was a great video. To learn French and practice French, that's perfect. And it's their teacher, and so they'll really like it. So anyway, Aloysia, please forgive me for mispronouncing your name, Aloysia. Great video, great French video. That's awesome video. And I guess I'll move here to Yelena. Yelena says, she says thanks for the SoundCloud file, the last audio files. You're so welcome, and actually thank you so much for that content, because that's one of the biggest reasons I'm doing it again. 3 or 4 people have reached out and said thank you so much, that this format really helps them, this audio format where I'm just talking. It helps me. Anyway, thank you. You're the reason I'm doing this again. Yelena has a great question. Yes, this was a difficult question. All right, so I took some notes on this one. I have a couple tips. This is the big question. She says, I'm focused now in planning the in-class time. And that is, once you get into flipping and you get good at making the content, now what do I do with the in-class time? She makes a great comment and says it depends on the content. She's exactly right. But she asks if I have any general or universal tips. Do you have any do's and don'ts for classwork? Well, sure, that was not an easy question, but I'll take a stab at it. Some do's and don'ts. I took some notes here, and my don'ts are kind of included in the do's. So I have some do's here, and I think the don'ts are kind of included in the do's. So let's just say 5 do's. This is obviously not an extensive report. This is just a quick couple of ideas I have this morning. All right, so 5 do's for flipping your in-class. Do number 1. Do make your in-class activities directly related to your out-of-class content. So, like I said before, the being careful about flipping grammar and vocabulary. Be careful of flipping the content and then just coming to the class and having more free practice. No, you want to be very specific about planning your in-class activity that builds directly off the out-of-class content so that you can, as a coach or a guide or a facilitator or a more proficient user of a language, can guide the lesser proficient person to do things that they couldn't do before. And that's just coaching people. You want to have them be able to do something that before they couldn't do. And that's difficult, and you need a guide and pushing. So don't just make a video and then come to class and do those other activities that you always wanted to do. Now, the point of flipped learning is leveraging that content to be able to build off of it and push them and push them to more advanced thinking and doing, and helping them do things they couldn't do before. Do number one, do make your in-class activities directly built off the out-of-class content so that they can advance more efficiently. Do number two, know your students and meet them often. So often I hear people say, know your students, and all right, we'll do the first day activity. I get to know them a little bit. However, that's not enough. People are changing constantly. People are complex individuals. And if we're talking about learning, more specifically language learning, we know that language learner systems are dynamic, constantly changing. One day they might say the form right, the next day they don't, the next day they do. That's because things are in constant motion. There's a lot of things happening cognitively and socially in the language learning process. And we can't just get to know someone one time and know them forever. And in addition to knowing them personally, when I say know them, I mean know where they are in their learning process at all times. And that's a lot of individuals on a spectrum of learning, and that's a lot of movement. It's hard to keep track of all those things. So how can you know your students? Well, meet them often. What do I mean by that? Well, when I say meet them often, and when I say know your learners, well, we're really talking about differentiation, aren't we? So Tomlinson talks about differentiating both the process and the product of learning. But instead of getting all into that, I just wanted to give you a quick tip, which was in one of her presentations. And that's entrance tickets and exit tickets. So how can you know them regularly, and how can you stay on top of where they are in the learning? Well, kill two birds with one stone. This is often called an accountability device in flipped learning. What are they doing when they watch the video at home? They need to be watching, they could be watching the video and clicking on Edpuzzle or Educanon on an interactive video, or they could be copying down things into their notebook and bringing that to class. They could be answering a couple questions on a sheet of paper. Then they come to class, and to conceptualize this, just imagine waiting at the door as they come in. You're saying hello, and they're giving you their entrance ticket, a little piece of paper with the question to the answer on the video or whatever. A simplistic thing, but yeah, that absolutely works. And so you're checking them if they did it right there at the door, and you're getting a little bit of a view of where they are in their learning process, and that's good data for a teacher. You could also do this as an exit ticket of a day or a unit. And so at the end of the skill, their exit ticket before they leave the class that day could be a check mark from the teacher of, okay, I saw them do the activity, check. Or it could be a little piece of paper answering some questions. I often like to use it as a way of reflection. Just ask them 3 questions. What did you learn today? What do you want to learn more about? And set one goal for the next class. All right, and that's a perfect example of an exit ticket. And by doing entrance and or exit tickets regularly, you're following each of them individually in their learning process, and so you can know them and meet them often. That's the second do. Know your students and meet them often as a way to promote differentiation. Do number 3, train your learners well. You got to train your learners well. You got to, the first day of class, we'll just show them the course syllabus, the course calendar, and I have that divided up in before and during class sections so they can see what they need to do to prepare. I recommend doing that on an interactive hyperdoc, which could just be a Google Doc or a Google Slides, which has the calendar so that they can click the links. So if there's watch a video and they have a paper document, well, how were they going to copy the YouTube link down? Nah, just better to make an interactive link, and so that they have access to the hyperdoc syllabus so that they can click the links to the video. Show them how to do that. Show them how to use that document, where to find the date, where to find what they're supposed to do that day. That's a part of training. And then train them how to watch the videos. Do an example one right there. Put on a video. Look at them. Look around. Pause the video and say, hey, how come no one has a notebook out? Get out a notebook. Take notes. Copy this down. And show them together how they're supposed to do it. Show them that they're supposed to write questions on things they're confused about. And then lead them through kind of a sample activity of when you come to class. If you want, what's a way to check bookwork and things? Here's another little quick tip. I really love team-based learning, and at the beginning of it, they have something called a readiness check. And basically, they come to class and they take a quick individual quiz, and then they get in a group and they take the same quiz as a group and clarify things. And then at the end of that, you might have a few minutes of discussion and clarification. So that's a great way to start class, I think, from team-based learning. But that's training. Train them how to do the videos. Give them a quick example of that readiness quiz if that's what you choose to do. And so that they can see how to watch the video, make sure that they know how to use the correct dictionaries and the correct tools and Quizlet and whatever apps you want to use, learning management system. Show them, and also show them how it all interacts. Where is the content going to be found? Where are they going to be interacting with each other? Where are they going to be posting things? Don't skip on the learner training. I take two classes of learner training each time. So don't skip. Do learner training. Do number 4. Keep in mind great pedagogy. So if we're talking language learning and curriculum design, I just want to refer once again to Paul Nation's work on the 4 strands. You want to divide them equally. 25% of class time should be focused on meaning-focused input, meaning-focused output, language-specific instruction, and fluency development. Most courses are overly emphasizing the language-focused instruction, and they're under-emphasizing the fluency development. And these fluency development activities, I think, are a great answer to how should I be spending my in-class time. So I would recommend looking into Paul Nation's work. In order to be fluency development, there are 4 elements. 1, it needs to be message-focused, meaning-focused. It needs to have no unfamiliar language, so nothing new, no new vocabulary. It should be practicing what they already know so that they can become proficient and fluent in things they've already learned. So often we just push through the syllabus and we're constantly learning new stuff, but we're not doing enough recycling. We're not letting them practice the old material so that they can get fluent in the old material. Also, there needs to be a pressure to go faster. There needs to be a time element. That could be reading for speed, listening to tasks with a limited amount of time, which could be increasing the speed of the recording or just decreasing the amount of time they have to process. Also, writing. That could be write as much as you can for 10 minutes. And don't worry about being correct per se. Just write as much as you can for 10 minutes, and then they track what they do each class, how many words they write. Or for speaking, a great activity is the 3-2-1 or the 4-3-2. And this could be done in a lot of ways. It could be an inner circle and an outer circle, and then they spin, or you could have 2 lines and they rotate and they shift. But basically, you have 1s and 2s. And so one side speaks. They speak for 3 minutes to have their opinion, and then 2 minutes to speak their opinion, and then only 1 minute to speak their opinion. So they say it once, and then they shift. And then they say it again with less time, and then they shift. And then they say it a third time, and they have even less time. This pushes them to go faster. And not only do we see learners increase their words per minute, but they also increase their accuracy on between the different takes. And the other side is getting great listening practice. And then you switch. So I would just stick with one side, doing it all at once. The ones go 3, 2, 1, and then switch to the twos. They go 3, 2, 1. And so that pushes them to go faster. And the last thing is that there needs to be a large quantity of practice. This needs to be something I do it. I try to focus on fluency development to begin my class each day, whether that's quick vocabulary recall with games or the 3, 2, 1 activity, and I try to finish the class with the 10-minute writing, write as much as you can, pushing them to go faster. And so when you give feedback on those, you don't want to focus on errors, just on content, and maybe even promote them to write more, say comments and ask them questions, and maybe give them ideas for what to write about the next time. So do balance your learning. Those are examples of fluency development, which are lacking a lot in a lot of classes, and because there's so much emphasis on the language-focused instruction. So do check out Nation's work and do balance your class to the 4 strands. And the last do that I have, at least for now, is do be persistent. Don't try to flip a lesson and then it doesn't work out and then it quits. You expect a little resistance and expect it to be difficult to make videos, and expect it to be difficult to plan your in-class time. Expect it to be difficult to plan your curriculum and plan your syllabus and plan your calendars, because it's a little different. Expect to have a little bit of difficulty, expect it to be challenging to change the culture of your class. It's not going to happen on the first day, the first week. This is something you got to model, and you got to stay strong and stay persistent on flip learning, because it really does work, and you keep growing. I promise it really does change and transform how you teach and how your classroom functions. Well, I guess that's enough content for now. Been rambling here for a while. It's been 23 minutes. Yeah, we're talking about education, and I just can't shove these into a 4-minute video. Wanted to respond to another comment here from Zainab. She talks about flipping writing, and I don't want to go through the whole comment, but I just want to say she talked about flipping the kind of mechanisms for writing, skills for writing, and then in the class getting feedback, having discussions, doing brainstorming, or doing the actual writing. And I think that's a great idea, Zainab. If you all are thinking about flipping writing, have them do some writing in class, because that's the hardest thing for people, especially when they just don't know how to sit still and sit down and write. And people often, everything makes sense in class, but then they go home to write and they lock up. They don't know what to do. So have them do some writing in class. Make a cool environment to where people can be working, studying, reading, and doing brainstorming, and just actually doing the writing. That's a great idea, Zainab. I agree 100%. Rosa Maria asks, how do we make sure that they're doing the pre-class work? Well, I think in the entrance ticket, what I mentioned before, I think that's a great way to make sure that they're doing the out-of-class work. Another thoughtful comment from Eileen. She basically just mentioned that she thinks she can improve her videos and doesn't quite feel comfortable making videos and things. And I just want to say, stick with it. It's uncomfortable at first, and it does take some time at first, and we're tough critics on ourselves, aren't we? I mean, it's just like people making art. You let an adult draw a picture, and then you ask them what they think, and they'll just say, "Oh, I hate it. It's ugly." So people are very tough on themselves, and it can be very uncomfortable. I mean, perfect example right now. I'm talking into this microphone, and it's not always comfortable, and I listen to the recording again, and I delete it, because I'm like, "Oh, man, you sound stupid," and you're just rambling on. But the truth is you help more people than you know. And just a couple people reach out, and you don't even know that they're benefiting. So I would say just carry on. Just keep at it. Be persistent. Keep making those videos. You'll get better at it. You'll get faster at it. You'll get more efficient at it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's better to have something that's 70% perfect and launch it to your students than to wait for something that's 100% perfect, because then you'll never do it. You'll never publish anything. So stick with it. A lot of people are self-conscious and a little uncomfortable, but hey, I am too sometimes. So that's perfectly normal. Anyway, those are some comments for the day. I just wanted to take some of your questions. Thank you so much. I didn't have time to answer them all, and I really appreciated all your comments. Please ask more questions on these SoundCloud files. On SoundCloud, you can actually leave comments and questions right at the moment of speaking, which is really cool, or on our Google Plus community, or on Twitter at ProfeKevin. I'm at ProfeKevin on Twitter. Would love to answer more questions or just start a dialogue about flip learning. I'm just throwing this out here, hoping that someone's listening and someone cares. And have a great day. I love talking about flip learning. And I also today did 5 do's for the flip learning. So until next time, have a great day.